Welcome. Today we're talking about sealing wax, something that takes your stationery above and beyond. But first, let's get into the history of sealing wax a little bit. So the idea of putting your mark or stamp on a seal goes back all the way to ancient Mesopotamia, all right, thousands and thousands of years ago, on clay tablets. They would actually put their seal at the bottom into the clay. They'd have to bake the clay, and then that would be permanently in the tablet. So you could authenticate that tablet, that clay tablet. Where did it come from? Who was the writer? So a seal goes all that way back. Now, for our purposes, common seals, what we think of for sealing wax, it started later on in the Middle Ages. So going all the way back to the Middle Ages, these were originally for wealthy people. Keep in mind, too, most people back then, the vast majority were illiterate, so they could not read. Originally, back in the Middle Ages, their wax was made of like a beeswax and some olive oil and some other additives, and that's what they were really using at that point. Back then, it was typically used for official decrees and to legitimate documents. You know, it's that authentication. You know where that document came from. Now, a cool thing that I learned was that seals, we think of seals today like this on the stamp, and that's what most people in the, past 200 years did. But before this, the seals were often on a ring because you would carry it around with you. If you were, some sort of feudal lord or, someone in the court, if you had any sort of status, you might be out somewhere and need to put your, authentication, your seal on something. So in that case, a lot of people actually had these put on rings, and then they would just wear, I'll show you, and then they would just have a ring that was their seal. And this is kind of where you hear the story about, like, kiss the ring, like, some peasant has to go and kiss the ring to show their loyalty, their fealty to their lord, Well, that's where this comes from. That's the ring. That's their ring. After that person would die, those rings were destroyed, so no one could ever replicate or try and duplicate their signature on something that was illegitimate. So that was a cool historical fact. People that were not rich enough to actually have their stamps made into a ring would often wear them as a pendant on a necklace, or even as a clasp on their wallet or purse if they, happen to be wealthy enough to have one of those. So cool fact about, the history of the stamps themselves there too, and how we got into the Middle Ages. So even though the seals were originally for the wealthier people, they were widespread by the 1200s. So they were used by guilds, monasteries, and even common folks to authenticate and to seal their letters or correspondence or decrees. Those rings, by the way, were called signet rings. Now we're jumping forward after the Middle Ages. This was when, the last 300 years or so, letters were expensive to send. The wax seal meant you didn't need an envelope because you could actually seal your letter as is. So most people couldn't afford envelopes. It was an extra expense. They were handmade. You would then need to seal it on top of that. It adds weight. So, most people, what they did, let me put all this aside. I'll show you. All right, back then, so what most people would do, this would be your letter. This is actually my first time practicing this fold, so we'll see how it goes. So they would fold it over on itself a little bit. Good. And we'll fold this up again. I went a little bit far, but that's okay. And this part would fold down, and now it looks more like an envelope as we think of it today, right? Another step that they would do they would kind of tuck in that part too. This part, because you're sealing with wax in the center, so the sides can still pop up and such. So they would kind of tuck those corners in like that. There we go. Now you've got yourself an old-fashioned envelope, just the way Ben Franklin would have made. There you go. You put your seal right there. That's how most people back in the day made their letters. The letter itself was the envelope. So fast forward into, the 1800s, and then more people can afford to get envelopes. By the early 1800s, they had made envelope folding machines. So machines would actually fold the envelopes and you could sell them, mass produce them. It wasn't until 1876, however, that the first sticky envelope machine was made that actually applied that adhesive on the back. So not until the late 1800s were like sticky envelopes even potentially an option. There was definitely some hesitance to necessarily adopt, as with any new technology. I found a case of a man who died in 1895 from cutting his tongue licking the envelope. his tongue swelled up and it got infected, and he died very shortly thereafter. So there was these kind of, tales of, ooh, like, don't, these things will kill you, kind of, with any new technology you find this. But, they were eventually adopted, and the wax seal really fell out of use by the 1900s in lieu of envelopes and more easier technologies. There was a really cool intermediate technology, too, in between the wax seal and the adhesive envelope. There was a wafer, and that was around for, 30, 40 years, late 1700s, early 1800s. And that was basically where you would put a little thin piece of adhesive under your tongue and get it wet and damp. And then you would slip that under here and then put that down. And then you would have a different, like, wafer, almost like a waffle iron type thing. You would press down on it. So those were patterns, not like shapes and signatures. Those were like very kind of mundane patterns meant just to impart surface area and stick that. So that was really interesting intermediate technology that existed for a while. It obviously, I'd never even heard of it until I looked into this for you guys. But one thing that I found was it was kind of more for friends. You wouldn't send that. It would be offensive to use that to a dignitary in a professional manner or something or other, because basically when that person opens it and touches it, they've now touched something that's been in your mouth. So that's like a dirty thing. So that was like almost an offense to do that to like anybody other than, people that you were already accustomed to, friends, family, things like that. So that was an interesting intermediate technology. But anyway, we're moving on. So by the 1900s, wax was pretty much gone. And then people are kind of bringing it back, just like fountain pens and stationery, just like I'm getting into, because it's really amazing to get a good piece of correspondence in the mail. It makes you feel just way better, more personalized than could be designed with an email. Something else that was cool while I was looking into this project was I learned more about stamps and the whole post office system. The original letters in early colonial America, you didn't pay any postage. You would give it to wherever you could, the local public place, like a tavern, and hopefully mailmen might get there in the next couple of weeks to pick it up. You could literally give it to a mailman if you saw one. So it wasn't like an official post office mailbox like we have today. And then you wouldn't pay any money when you dropped it off. The recipient would have to pay on the distance and, the difficulty of the travel over rivers, over mountains. That was extra, for example. So something that was really interesting to me was that a lot of people, just like a collect call, you could refuse it. So there are unopened letters out there because the people couldn't recognize the signature. They didn't know who it was sent by. So they just didn't want to pay to get that letter. It wasn't until the invention of, self-adhesives and stamps and things like that later down the line that now we have to pay up front at the post office, and it simplifies everything. So, all right. Another cool thing I came across while I was learning about, the different waxes and stuff like that. Back in the day, in the 1800s and such, colors had meanings. So green and blue were like a casual. So this was for like, friends, things like that. And then if you were to use red, it was formal. So any sort of formal documents would be, sealed with a red wax. If it had a black wax on it, that would mean something bad was within. So it basically meant you're going to want to be alone and sitting down when you open this letter. So that was kind of interesting too. The different colors of wax signaled different meanings to the actual correspondence. Oh, one more thing too before we carry on. So they used the beeswax in the Middle Ages. By the 1800s, they were using like a shellac. So this is wax, and this is what we use today. But in that period, 200 years ago, they were using a shellac. Shellac is like a resin that is excreted from a type of bug, the lac bug, the female lac bug actually, onto the bark of trees, and it can be collected and kind of solidified down. So back then they were using shellac, actually. They would heat it over the candle and dip it in. But now we've moved since then to wax. Another fun fact I learned on this deep dive was that the actual adhesive has calories. Most envelopes are going to have less than 0.1 calories, but some envelopes, even in the UK, can go up to 15 calories for every lick. So I thought that was another interesting side note. So hey, save weight, use wax seals. All right, we're about to get into it. Before we do, though, the cost of these things isn't too exorbitant. So this kit right here on Etsy was somewhere around, $30 to $40. It was a couple, dollars extra because I got one personal stamp with an engraving on it of my initials. So that was, just a couple extra dollars. Otherwise, on Amazon, you can get sets of seals that this is kind of like a Celtic design set here. And this was closer to, somewhere around $15. Not exorbitant, not bad. Really cool considering you get so many cool options. Okay, now we've got a special guest star here to join us. This is my daughter, and it happens to be our granddad's birthday today. So she has made a nice drawing here, and we're going to go ahead, and she wanted to seal it with the wax. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over here and light our candle. Now you know you can never ever do this alone without an adult, because this has fire. So kids, ask your adults at home. All right, now we've got this cut out here. Now this isn't how they did it necessarily in the 1800s. This is our modern way. We've got a tea light candle here. This is made for a little tea light, and you can see it's got cutouts there and metal on top, so it's a little bit of wax over there. So it's not going to catch on fire as long as you use it responsibly. All right, now we've got our little melting spoon here. I don't know if that has an official name. I should have looked that up. All right, can you get 3 pieces of wax from here, and then go ahead and put it in, you don't have to watch this. You can just put it right in the spoon. The camera will get you, don't worry. 1, 2, 3. Okay, perfect. Now we're going to kind of get that kind of on the bottom. I'm actually going to turn that one so it's all flat, better surface area. Now we're going to sit that on our candle back there. And one of the reasons I wanted the kit was because other ones you come with a little spoon, but then you have to hold it over the candle, and you know, this is that's just too much. So I like this because now I do other parts. Usually I address my letter while I'm waiting for this process to happen. But we're going to go ahead and pick our seal because we already know where this is going. All right, so the seals we've got today, we've got that one there. We've got this one with the heart and the Celtic knot. We've got another Celtic design there. And you can get all different designs and styles. These I liked because they were definitely a little bit more manly. I'll just say it. Most of the seals were more feminine, and some of these, you know, some things like this, which is still very pretty. And you know, I love having options. You know, when I write my wife, I use this one. I use the one with the heart. And when I'm writing my friends, you know, my guy friends, I might use something like that. So different seals for different people. Okay, what else do we have? We've also got this one here, which is very intricate. Okay, which one would you like for Grandpa, you think?
The butterfly.
Butterfly? Mm-hmm. Butterfly here. Okay. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to attach this. Again, if you are just fast forwarding to this part, cool piece of history while we're waiting for that wax to melt is long ago in the Middle Ages, people would actually have these as rings. So they would, you know, stories about old, you know, peasants have to kiss the king's ring, things like that. And most of those rings were their signet rings, which were their emblems that they would use to seal documents. They would always just have that on them as a ring. Other people might have it as a pendant on a necklace or a clasp on a wallet or a purse. So cool history fact if you skip that part while we're waiting for that wax. So now we are all set here. Okay, so the wax is almost melted, and you want to wait until you really don't see that definition of the original 3 anymore. So we're going to give it another probably 20 seconds, 30 seconds. I am going to pick this up and hold this, and I'm going to pour it right there, okay? And then you are just going to put it, so see how there's only, you want it face up, right? So you need to make sure that it's that way, and then you stamp it right down. It's not going to be perfect, and it's okay if it's a little bit off, okay? All right, so you are going to put this just like this. Don't turn it. You can even look and see before you smush it. You're going to smush it down, and then don't pull up. You're going to let it there. Take your hand off, okay? So here, get used to it. Get used to the feel. Look at it. One more thing I like to do is I get something like a big paper towel, and I put that to the side because when you are done with this spoon, it's going to be scalding hot. So I don't want to put it on wood or something else that's going to necessarily burn. So I just kind of put it on this until it can kind of cool down. You could put it back on here, but while the candle's still going, you're going to have just a tiny, tiny thin layer of wax, and that's going to heat that up to the point that it might start to smoke or smell or something yucky. So here's what I do. I just kind of have this here, and that's where I rest it until I can clean it. All right, you ready? Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go.
Certainly.
Let's flip it up and look. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Okay, now hold on. We're going to show you here. See how you can't really see the 3 original designs anymore? So that's how we know it's definitely heated and ready. Okay, here we go. Okay, don't go till I tell you. We're not going to get all of it done, just a little bit, and that's okay. All right, go ahead and smush it in. And then just let it go. Perfect. All right, now we are just going to leave that on a flat surface here and wait for that to go ahead and dry. Now when it dries, you shouldn't have to forcibly like pull against this. Put a little bit of pressure and it'll go, and it'll just pop right off, and that's how you know that wax is dry and ready. If you try and pull it off too soon, you're gonna get kind of mushy, ill-defined features. Okay, should be good. Do you want to come over? All right, now when you do it, just kind of pull, like, just push or pull to one side gently, and it should pop right off. There you go. Go, go, go. Perfect.
Oopsies.
That's okay. We'll get it. It's a little bit thick there. That's all right. This was your very first one. Look at that. You did it. Your very first one, and look at that. She's got a beautiful wax seal with a butterfly. Good job. At this point in the process, I usually clean my spoon. So if it's not heated up, this has been sitting a little bit. I'm going to put it there for just a minute. Then you're going to get your paper towel. And you're literally just going to absorb all that wax. Might take a couple runs. I usually fold it over on itself so you're not like getting the same wax back in there. And then you just do that, and if your spoon is hot, it comes out nice and clean, so no worries there. Now this is still a little bit hot, so I'm going to put that on that to cool down. This part is also, you know, not hot, but the metal is a little bit hot, so I'm going to put that to the side to cool down before I put it back in the box. And then this we can just blow out. Now you can blow out, but that's just going to cause a lot of smoke. So what I do is we're going to suffocate it of oxygen so it doesn't make a lot of smoke. You want to do that? There you go. Those are my actual cleaning vessels, so I'll fill that up with water when I want to clean something. But when you start fire of oxygen, it goes out, and it doesn't make a lot of smoke. So it's not going to stink up my whole room after this. All right, let's get to the next cool thing. Here, I'm going to pause, and I'm going to clean up this area so we can get to the next cool thing. So the next thing we're going to do to adorn my daughter's wax seal we just made is we are going to make the center even more ornate and kind of pop out even more by adding some specialty kind of, I don't know what it's called, it's like a dust. They've got many different colors, silver, gold, blues, greens. So what we're going to do is we're going to just open this up. This is from Etsy, and this was for wax seals. And it came with a little applicator too, which was nice. All right, so you're gonna go like this, and actually I already did it for you, so you're good there. So I'm gonna close that up. Now listen, when you go on this part, you don't wanna push down and smush it because it's gonna get everywhere. You just wanna get the raised parts, okay? So keep this as flat as possible.
Wait, so only do the butterfly?
Yeah, only do the butterfly and keep it as flat as possible so you don't smush in because that's gonna lose your detail. So if you keep it as flat as possible and just kind of rub it side to side, only on the butterfly, it's gonna make it awesome, okay? Here you go. Here, you hold that. Got it? All right, go for it. Nice. Good job. All right, and now look at our awesome seal we've made. Now, when your granddad sees that, he's going to be very impressed. Good job.
It's a little bit on the side of this.
Oh, that's okay. I'm gonna get it. Good job. Thank you, my lovely guest star. All right, here is your sealed envelope. Your granddad's birthday. Good job. All right, I'm gonna do one more seal for you so you can see a seal from someone who's a little bit more experienced, but I was so happy that my daughter is enjoying this hobby with me. While I'm heating some different color wax for you, I actually put in one too many because I was going to use a bigger seal. So there are different physical diameters of seals, and each one and each design is going to use a little bit more, a little bit less wax. Now the waxes come in different cuts, different shapes, different sizes. So you really kind of need to play a little bit to figure out, like, these ones take 4 for my personal stamp versus the gray ones were a little bit bigger, so they only took 3. So you're gonna have to kind of play to figure out your perfect, here's the other shape of the gray ones. You're gonna have to play to figure out kind of the perfect amount of wax for the size and detailing in your stamp. But I'm gonna go ahead and do one that's a little bit more ornate just because it's fun. All right, so our definition is gone and those different colors. This was a specialty wax to point out that you can get cool specialty waxes with more iridescence, more shimmer in them. And as you can see, there's like 2 or 3 different shades there. So when we make our seal, that's really gonna impart a cool look to it. So, all right, let's do this. Just like Ben Franklin would have. Franklin style. Oh, 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 oh. Sorry. Probably gonna lose some viewers for that. All right, this one you don't have to align, so we're just gonna smoosh it right down in. And I actually kind of lost some definition on my initial push. If you can just go straight down, that's the best, but you kind of gotta like move it just a hair if you're not perfectly aligned, because you do want to get that definition all around. So if you smush it and you're missing a corner, you're going to lose that part of the design. So try and get it as straight into it as you can, but if you have to go a millimeter or two over, you know, it might result in less definition on the outside, but greater definition on the actual design, which is what I'm looking for. And again, you're not going to pull this up until it's ready. You are waiting for that wax to dry just enough so it detaches itself basically from the metal. You can see I'm lifting, still sticking, so that's not quite there. Give it another few seconds. There we go. All right. Now check that out. Now that's cool, right? That's just how it comes. So you could definitely pop this in the mail and just send it like that if you wanted. Speaking of, if you are sending these through the mail, if you have a thick wax seal, thicker than this, you may need to put it in a separate envelope. Otherwise, you can just put an extra forever stamp. So if you do 2 forever stamps, that will be enough to make it hand mailed. So it doesn't go through the machine. You have to take it into the post office yourself, physically hand it to them, say that you'd like it sent, you know, not through the machines, and that's why there's 2 forever stamps on it. That works just fine. My most recent one, I was told actually that because these wax stamps, again, I don't have giant wax stamps. If you play with the wax, get just the right amount. These will fit through the letter slot. So my most recent one, I was told I can just put it through the letter slot. It's not going to mess up the machine. So I took a chance. I'll let you know in a week or two when that gets there, you know, how that came out on the other side. But there you go. So the post office, you can send these through the post office. All right, and then we're going to get our very last thing here. I'm going to clean this up and then get our last part and show it off. All right, so now I'm adding that extra pop. This was just what was left over on the brush from earlier, so we're going to have to open it up, get a little bit more. Doesn't take much. And actually you don't want much, because if it's too much, it'll actually go right in those crevices and inhibit the look of your seal. So you kind of want just enough to highlight the raised portions without actually kind of overdoing it, because that's actually going to detract from the aesthetics here. And there we have a completed brand new handmade wax seal. Thank you for coming with us on this journey. Thank you for learning about the history of wax seals and envelopes and some of the post office backs. This was a fun deep dive. I definitely learned a lot of adjacent things. I started off trying to just research wax seals, and then I ended up learning about envelopes and, you know, stamps and envelope machines and self-adhesive. And so it was a really fun deep dive. So thank you for sticking with me, and may your journey lead to serenity.